Hello ladies and gentlemen, MarauderEX here with a recap video of E3. I apologize that I didn't get a chance to do the recap of each individual press conference like I did last year. I'm still coughing a lot, and it was just beyond obnoxious to try to record and have that be the underlying theme of each video. And I apologize, I'm going to probably be coughing through this as well. But since the event just ended, we just saw the last of the big three. I really wanted to give my thoughts on E3 as a whole so far. Of the big three, there are going to be more press conferences going on. I'm going to try to cover those as more information comes out, because we've got, things like Capcom, Sega, etc. So I want to just take this time to cover the big three. So I wrote down notes for each one. It was Sunday was Microsoft, Monday was Sony, and today, Tuesday, is Nintendo. So I'm just going to run through each press conference, the games that they showed, information that they presented, and just kind of give my thoughts on each presentation as a whole, and then talk about the things that, stuck out as highlights for me. So first off, we had Microsoft. They revealed to us Scorpio is now the Xbox One X. Its release date, and price. The games that they showed off are Anthem, Assassin's Creed, Black Desert Online, Crackdown 3, Dragon Ball FighterZ, Forza 7, Life is Strange, Metro, Minecraft, PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, Sea of Thieves, State of Decay, and there's probably a couple in there that I'm missing as well. These are the main ones, because I'm pretty sure one of the ones in there was that weird arena game that I don't think I listed that one, mostly because that one aggravated. Anyway, so Microsoft's press conference was actually really surprising, because typically in the past they get chastised for focusing on the wrong thing. They'll either focus on the media aspects of it, as a media console, what all it can do other than gaming. I kind of figured this time, since we were seeing Scorpio turn into the Xbox One X, that they were going to spend a lot of time focusing on talking about the hardware potential, the power, the graphical capabilities, and the advantages and advancements of 4K. And they really didn't touch on that all that long. They did talk about it a little bit with the original Xbox One X reveal, and then they just went straight into games, which is very different from what Microsoft typically does. This was a very different showing for Microsoft, and I have to say, I enjoyed their presentation. It was actually a really good presentation this year. Previously, I would just kind of tune out and not care about, yes, I can watch movies, or, the things, the live streaming apps, the music and gaming and things I didn't care for any of the external stuff that they kind of wanted to make that be. In fact, the jokes of TV, how many times did they say that when the Xbox One was originally unveiled? Or things like your all-in-one media device, which is why they named it the Xbox One, because it's one device for everything. Anyway, the other thing that kind of bothered me about this is the Xbox One X. I'm not... And I fully admit this, I'm not the target demographic for this. I don't see the need to spend $500 on a console that is not going to have anything exclusive to its power. One of the things that they have continuously said is the Xbox One X will not get exclusive games for the One X. Anything that will be playable on the One X should be playable on the entire Xbox One line. Either Xbox One, Xbox One S, or Xbox One X. And that's one thing I'm going to get into here in a minute. But they're not going to have anything that's specifically powered to that, which, given the games that they showed off some really great games, but a lot of them are either going to be multi-platform titles, or they're going to also be available on Windows 10, which, in my case, being someone who does content creation, I have a decent PC. I wouldn't consider it super beefy by any stretch of the imagination, but it's decent enough to play, and for a fraction of the price of picking up an Xbox One, I could upgrade this to play the games in a more high-resolution format, mimicking, if not surpassing later on, the Xbox One X. So I understand I'm not the target demographic, but I actually kind of am in some ways, because I prefer having I love recording off of consoles. It makes things so much easier because I'm not double taxing my machine to play and record a console at the same time. Whereas, like, if I'm playing on PC, I'm diverting system resources to split amongst both. So that I could see, but if I'm going to spend the money on a console, I could just get an Xbox One S for cheaper and not worry about the supremely amazing graphics that the X can provide. But that's me. My other complaint is from someone who worked retail. I know the Xbox One X and S, the consonant sounds are too similar. It's not as bad as the Wii versus the Wii U, but I guarantee you there's going to be some confusion on it, and that's a problem. That's a problem with consumers for the most part. A lot of consumers that don't do their homework, don't do their research, they make assumptions based off of what is presented to them via advertisements. I worked around the same time that the Wii U was released. I can't tell you how many people assumed it was just a tablet controller for the original Wii, and they didn't understand why Wii games or Wii U games couldn't be played on the Wii. They didn't understand that because it was just so poorly presented. And I don't think Microsoft's going to do that quite the same way, but it's close enough to where, you know, there's going to be some confusion, and it's going to be a little aggravating. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as bad as the Wii and the Wii U were, but I think it's close enough that I really think Microsoft probably should have tried for something a little bit different. I don't know. That's just me. But then the other thing is a lot of the games that they showed off were available on Windows 10, so again, I'm kind of split on it. There were some really good games. The best games that I saw for that really impressed me. Anthem looks neat. It looks interesting. Crackdown 3, I will buy it simply if they have FMV sequences of Terry Crews screaming at me. I would buy that in a heartbeat. Dragon Ball FighterZ. I love Dragon Ball fighting games. At least the old school ones. Like, I grew up on the PS1 era of games. I kind of got out of it, you know, PS2 era, but this one looks interesting. And Sea of Thieves looks like it could be a ton of fun. I think I would enjoy that immensely. So that's my thoughts on the Microsoft. Not the worst showing, much better than years past, but there are some decisions that I'm like, but they're going in an interesting, different path. They are kind of merging console and PC gaming into a more homogeneous ecosystem. So anything that kind of shakes up the status quo, I'm kind of interested in. So the next up we had the Sony conference, which started off aggravating the piss out of me. The first two trailers they showed I couldn't hear because they did not have the audio set up correctly, which kind of sucked because the first two trailers were Uncharted and Horizon Zero Dawn. So there's a new Uncharted game. I don't know what the plot of it is. I haven't been able to go back and check the uploaded trailer with the corrected audio, but you couldn't hear anything. I tried looking at several different streams from several different sites. It was a problem on that end. And, you know, every year at E3, someone's gonna screw up. It's a given. Somebody screws up. I think that's one of the reasons why Nintendo goes for pre-recorded directs, to kind of minimize the amount of screw-ups. This year just happened to be Sony. So yeah, we had Uncharted, Horizon Zero Dawn. They had Days Gone, Monster Hunter, Shadow of the Colossus, Call of Duty, Marvel vs. Capcom, a bunch of VR games. Skyrim, Star Child, Inpatient, a Final Fantasy fishing game, and Moss. And then they wrapped up with God of War, Detroit, Destiny 2, and Spider-Man. And again, going in a different way, Sony really wants to make VR gaming a thing. They showed off some VR games. Skyrim VR I think is kind of neat. Not enough to sell me on VR. I know Luth is super excited over VR, and the things he showed me are actually kind of neat, but I haven't seen enough to feel that it's going to be the next big jump Right now, it still feels kind of like the motion control gimmick. Like, there are some good things to it, but there's not enough yet to completely sell me on it. But I know that's the direction they want to go with the PSVR. So, but then the other stuff, like the games that they showed off, were actually really interesting. The Monster Hunter game looks amazing. Shadow of the Colossus, I wasn't sure if it was a new game or if it was a remaster, and several other sites were on that same boat because they didn't really give a lot of information about that. It does turn out that it's going to be a remaster of the first game, so that looks pretty. Marvel vs. Capcom, they showed off a little bit more of that, and I'm more interested, but still not enough. I'm disappointed in the Marvel vs. Capcom series because I know they're sticking to the cinematic universe, which is the MCU, which means like a lot of the series staples are not going to be there. Like any of the X-Men, because Fox currently owns the rights to those. It's said that they'll come as DLC later, but like you're not going to get Cyclops, Storm, Wolverine, the characters that have been in the Versus fighting games since this series conception with like X-Men versus Street Fighter. So I'm a little disappointed in that, but they did show off a little bit more to make it a little more interesting, give a little bit more idea of what the story is supposed to be about. So, and then God of War looks interesting, if not slightly confusing because I'm so lost in the God of War franchise. Detroit looked neat, if not slightly dark. Destiny 2, I never got into Destiny 1, but Spider-Man. Spider-Man was basically the best thing at that conference. Spider-Man looks amazing. And if Sony could keep bringing out titles that look and just have that level of polish and amazing stuff, that's a big jump. That's amazing. But yeah, that was Sony's. Not since they don't have a console, they didn't go into details about anything new because they've already got the PS4 and PS4 Pro out. Those are all old news. So, and then the last one was Nintendo. Nintendo had the shortest by far. It was only 25 minutes, but they packed a bunch of stuff in it, and it was all focused on the Switch. It was 25 minutes specifically of upcoming Switch games and information. Nothing 3DS related, but I have a feeling since they are doing like Treehouse spotlights throughout the week, anything else 3DS related is going to be kind of showcased there, but for their main E3 spotlight, they focused hardcore on the Switch. They started off with Xenoblade 2, talking about how it's going to have a holiday 2017 release. That game looks amazing. When it first started, the piano riff at the beginning actually made me think, are they doing Chrono Trigger? Because it sounded very, very Chrono Trigger for a moment, and I'm sitting here going, you teased me. But it looks great. It doesn't look as super serious, like the character designs don't look as super serious as the original Xenoblade Chronicles, but I'm not put off by the art style. I think it looks great, and the story looks interesting enough to where I would enjoy playing it. I know there are going to be some that are like, no, it's not serious looking enough. The characters look a little too Kingdom Heartsy, a little too giant feet, weird costume. I don't know, but I thought it looked interesting. There's a new Kirby game in development, just titled Kirby at the moment. They didn't really give much information on it. Just showed off some gameplay screens. It looks very much like Return to Dreamland sort of thing. But in this one, instead of having like Kirby, Meta Knight, King Dedede, and Waddle Dees, Kirby, and then you can make multiple helpers, kind of like Kirby Superstar, where your friends are playing the converted helpers based off the enemies. It's like you get Sir Kibble as an ally. So that looked interesting. I'm assuming it's going to play very similar to like New Super Mario Brothers or Kirby's Return to Dreamland 4-player. Co-op, side-scrolling platformer type deal. So, next up they had a new Yoshi game, which this one looked really interesting because it involved a lot of going back and forth into the background and foreground, a lot of shooting into the background and foreground. Did not look like your typical Yoshi title. It didn't look like Yoshi's Woolly World. It didn't look like Yoshi's Island. It actually looked kind of like Yoshi 64, Yoshi's Story. with a lot of the weird, because I know in some parts you could kind of go in a foreground path with that, but it was something, it looked different, and so I'm kind of curious to see what they're going to do with it. It does look like it has multiplayer functionality as well, so, but very little information on that. Then the biggest tease of the entire thing was literally like a 30-second tease of Metroid Prime 4. Like, literally just a logo. That's all they showed. And that was like, that was enough for me to go, I can see where people are going to lose their shit over this and just declare Nintendo the outright winner of E3. That's one of the things. Everyone declares who of the big three is the winner. And I think just that level of tease is going to get Nintendo the win, because they're doing something with Metroid. Then they show off Fire Emblem Warriors, a little bit more of that, a little bit of the story, and how the characters are kind of coming into play. I was kind of interested in that already. Like, I loved Hyrule Warriors, I love the Dynasty Warriors games, especially the spin-offs like the Dynasty Warriors Gundam. So a Fire Emblem game like that, I'm going to be very interested in regardless. So depending on how warrior-y the gameplay is, they didn't show off a lot of that. It was a lot of like story cutscene type things, so I don't know if the gameplay is going to mimic something like Hyrule Warriors, but I kind of hope so, because I love those kind of hack and slash type games. It's a lot of fun just to be like, I am an awesome general and I'm going to mow through an entire army of people on my own. Nothing feels more badass than that. Another massive tease that they showed off is they had the head of the Pokemon company come out and say, hey, we talked about Pokken Tournament DX. We're also working on a Pokemon RPG, like a full-fledged Pokemon RPG for the Switch. We don't know when it's going to be out. It could take a while, but we're working on it. So a lot of the information that people were expecting about Pokemon Stars, I have a feeling that's what that is. At least the base concept. Whether or not it stays Pokemon Stars, I don't know. But they basically said, yeah, we're going to have a mainstream Pokemon RPG on the Switch, which basically says like they are going hardcore into the Switch, because the Pokemon game has always been a handheld franchise. At least the main games have been handheld to encourage the going out, the trading, the interaction, that sort of thing. So now that they're focusing on the Switch, that kind of shows that they want the Switch to be a handheld just as much as they want it to be a console. So, still with the identity crisis. Then they talked about the Breath of the Wild DLC, the 2 DLC packs for that, and the release date for one, and then a nebulous release date for the second. It looks interesting. If you've already beaten Breath of the Wild and you're looking for a little bit more to do in the game, extra stuff. So, they talked about how Rocket League is coming to the Switch, which actually kind of excites me, because I've enjoyed playing Rocket League, and I don't own a copy yet myself. I was probably going to pick it up on PS4, but since they have cross-network play announced, I could pick it up on the Switch and play it anywhere. Like the Switch allows, you can play it anywhere, because it's also a handheld. Identity crisis. And then they finished off talking about and showing off Mario Odyssey, which I was confused the first time they showed off Mario Odyssey. I am even more confused now. I have no idea what this game is about, what is going on. There's a magic hat that allows you to possess people, and possessing certain things allows you to change the world around you. It's trippy. I don't know. It does not look like your typical Mario 3D platformer. It doesn't look like Mario Galaxy. It doesn't look like Mario 64. It's got aspects of a lot of these games, and then a lot of new features, a lot of new stuff that they're just, I don't know if they're just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, or if this is like just a masterful plan that I have no idea how to actually dissect it and figure out what their end game for this game is. So that was basically the entirety of the big three for E3. I guess I'd say probably Sony. A lot of people said Sony was probably the weakest. I don't know what they're saying of Nintendo, because again, it just happened. But when comparing Sony to Microsoft, a lot of people are like, Microsoft had a pretty good showing. I think there were a lot of really good showings, and there were a lot of games that were shown for all three consoles that look like they're going to be available on multiple platforms. Like, I really don't think Dragon Ball FighterZ is going to be coming to the Switch, unfortunately. I would love it to, but it is going to be on Xbox One or PS4. So, like, that's a great game that was shown at the Microsoft conference, but it's just as strong of a game for both consoles. And then things like Destiny 2, there's an exclusive deal with Sony for content, but the game is going to come out on both consoles. Like, that's just it. Marvel vs. Capcom, obviously going to be on both consoles. So, like, good showings for some. Like, Sea of Thieves, I would say, is probably the strongest Microsoft exclusive, and then Spider-Man was probably the strongest Sony exclusive, and then I don't even know what the strongest. I'd say probably Xenoblade, because it was the only game that actually got a lot of screen time. If they had actually shown something for Metroid Prime, that probably would have been the strongest for that. But I think all three actually had a pretty good showing. I wish Nintendo had a little bit more that they showing off some of the indie games that are coming out on the Switch, because I said I've backed a bunch of Kickstarter projects that are now all coming to the Switch. I would have loved to have seen them get some official screen time on the Nintendo platform, because the other two did really show off a lot of indie titles. So Nintendo not showing off the indie titles in their main press event feels a little but Nintendo goes their own way and they do their own thing with these presentations, so it's a very different mindset. So and that's the thing, they'll probably have a Treehouse showing sometime this week just focusing on some of the indie titles. So while it wasn't their main event, they don't seem to have a main event anymore. They have like one big thing and then lots of other things throughout the course of the week to try to keep the hype going all week, rather than, hey, you watched our press event and now you don't care. No one cares about the rest of E3. So it's different. But I really don't know who I'd declare the winner. Everyone had some really strong showing. Everyone had some kind of that I didn't really care about or wasn't really targeted to me. So all in all, I'd say it's not the worst E3 I've ever seen. Not the strongest, not the one that's gotten me the most hyped either. I was actually hoping Nintendo would have been able to keep that for me, because years past, Nintendo was basically the one that it's like, okay, after seeing that, I'm the most hyped about E3, I'm the most hyped about the coming year. Nintendo, they got close, but not as close as they had been. Mostly because I think if they had like one or two more games that they were talking about that would be available within the next year, would have done it, but not quite, just not quite. So let me know your thoughts on E3 this year. Did you get to see the big three? What about the other ones? The Bethesda, the Ubisoft. Like I said, I'm gonna keep my eye out for like Sega and Capcom and Konami and all of those other companies that, you know, typically have some sort of an E3 presence, seeing what they're going to talk about, their support for other consoles as the conference continues. So let me know your thoughts and opinions. What games stood out the most to you for E3? What got you the most hyped? What did you see that you're like, okay, but why though? Why are they doing this? So let me know your thoughts on it, and I will hopefully see you when I'm done with this god-awful cough. Hopefully it will be sooner rather than later, thanks to the wonderful advancements in medical science. So, yes, let me know your thoughts and opinions, and again, thank you all for tuning into the video, and, you know, all the stuff you do to help support the channel, the liking, the commenting, the favoriting, the subscribing, all of that jazz really does help out. And for those of you who can, I do have the Patreon to help produce more content when I'm not hating my lungs. So any support for the channel is support to me directly, and I really cannot thank you guys enough for even the smallest things you do for support, even if it's just sharing a video link with a friend. You know, the views help, the likes help, everything helps. So I can't thank you all enough for that. So I will see you next whatever rant I do. So till then, later everyone.